Now, finding a doctor is a little less challenging. United Health Group is investing in tools that make it easier for patients to navigate healthcare and pay less. These transparency tools help patients find providers, and this is the big thing: compare costs up front. The big picture? More transparent pricing benefits everyone. And these tools from United Health Group can help patients save hundreds of dollars annually. Learn more at unitedhealthgroup.com/commitment.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals that we've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast, we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership. And so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find ideas to help all of us lead our teams better. Our great coach on this episode is Markus Weise. Markus began coaching in the early 1990s and went on to lead the German women's field hockey team to gold at the 2004 Olympics and the German men's to gold at the 2008 and 2012 Olympics. This made him the first person in the history of field hockey to win gold with both men's and women's teams. He also led the German men's team to the 2011 and 2013 European Championships and twice led the men's indoor team to World and European Championships. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now, please enjoy Dr. David Turner and my interview with Markus Weise.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Markus Weise, welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming along for the interview. And before I start asking you questions, I must introduce my co-interviewer for tonight. Of course, many of you who listen to the podcast regularly will know Dr. David Turner. David, good evening, good morning, or good afternoon.
Yeah, good morning from here. But really looking forward to talking to Markus today. He's got some really interesting aspects to his story that I think people are going to find inspiring.
Well, Markus, perhaps we should start with something really simple. Could you tell us where you are in the world and what you've been doing so far today?
Okay, I live in Hamburg, and I'm sitting here at home in my home office. Doing this podcast. So since 2008, I live here in Hamburg. Originally, I come from Mannheim, which is a smaller town in the southwest part of Germany at the Rhine River. And then moved due to marriage reasons to Hamburg in 2008. And since then, I stopped. I can't really say I stopped coaching, which that wouldn't be true, but my profession now is I'm responsible for the Hamburg Pyramid of Talents. So I'm kind of a decentralized sports director now. I started in 2019 and have a contract till 28. So in Germany, you always get four-year contracts in sport, which is kind of ridiculous, but that's the way it is. So I did get fired after the first term. I got a second one. So I'm responsible for the Hamburg Pyramid. So that means Olympic players down to under 13 players. And Hamburg field hockey is a big city game in Germany. You won't find it in rural areas. So Hamburg is a big city, so there's lots of talent there. And Hamburg has a special situation where I think 4 up to 5 teams coming from Hamburg playing in the first division of Germany. So there's lots of derbies going on. There's lots of talents. And I'm responsible for that talent pyramid.
Well, we're going to talk about talent later on. We're also going to talk about different career moves and how you've gone from hockey into football and now into another area. But I wanted to start, Markus, with some of the great coaches that you've worked with. So I know that Bernhard Peters played a big role in your early development as a coach. I also know that you've coached against and spent time with Rick Charlesworth and Barry Dancer. Big,
spectacular.
They are indeed. We've interviewed both of those gentlemen.
I loved it.
Yeah, they're great. They're great. I always describe Rick to Dr. David as sort of being this icon in Australia and being this great coach. But I'm sure there's been many others you've seen along your journeys, whether it's with field hockey or football. But I'm wondering, Markus, what you think the great coaches do differently that sets them apart.
Yeah, that's a very good question. There's so many good coaches. Maybe there are not so many outstanding coaches, correct? I can try and give an answer. I mean, Rick is a very good example. He's quite different compared to myself. So it's not just about personality. You can have very different personalities and still be a great coach. I think the really good coaches, they have a clear vision of what they want to achieve. I'm pretty sure that if you don't have that, that's a major obstacle in your way. If you don't have a clear vision of what you really want to achieve, no matter what your field of is. I think it helps if you have a knowledge of who you are yourself, self-knowledge. What makes you tick, what motivates you. So get some knowledge about yourself. I think I'm pretty sure that all the great coaches have the ability to reflect about their own work and check what they do good and check what they're not doing good. And if there's something on that list, they really have the ability to fix that. And another point is, I'm pretty sure that the really good coaches have strong relationships in their teams with the players, and they also monitor the relationships the players have with each other. Because, well, coming from a team sport, where it's all about collaborating to get this high performance everyone is looking for, I think it's really the baseline is you have to build teams on trust and respect. If that's not there, you won't have a team. And trust and respect is also the base for strong relationships, because at the end of the day, you will have conflicts and you will have to fight. You will have to fight with players. Players fight with each other, but it's not about. Is that correct? It's not about the pecking order. Is that something that makes sense in the team? It's about how we deal with problems on the pitch, in training, on the pitch, on and off the pitch, in the locker room, wherever. So that's kind of you have to embrace that sort of conflict, because it's learning environment for everyone. So conflict, for example, in Germany is kind of something negative, but I think it's really something positive, because it gives you the chance to learn something. It's not so much about who is right or wrong. Conflict is about sharing different perspectives. You know, if I have a conflict with one of my players, there's at least two perspectives on a topic. Might be a technical stuff, might be tactical stuff, might be some sort of general behavior. Doesn't matter. But it's two perspectives, and as soon as you leave the right and wrong approach and maybe go around the topic, try to get yourself into the other guy's shoes and share that perspective. That's learning environment. So I would say embrace conflict as a learning environment. Try to establish a feedback culture that is all the good team, you will find conflict in every single good team, no matter what their field is. And I believe that good coaches, they embrace conflict as a perfect learning environment. So maybe the last thing in my mind is ask simple questions. I think the good coaches ask really simple questions. Like a while ago, I read this brilliant book. I think it was from an English rowing team. Does it make the boat go faster? I loved it. Okay. That's a simple question. So if you're running a campaign towards, I think that was towards the Sydney Olympics, and it was, I don't know the expression in German, it's Achter. So it's 8 big guys in a boat plus a smaller guy doing the steering and the motivation and screaming at these big bulls to row faster. And in that sort of campaign, everything comes up, it's about technology. There's some new boats, some new design, stuff like that. But get it down to ask simple question. Does it make the boat go faster? And to me, this is also a metaphor. My guys, they never sat in a rowing boat. Does it make the boat go faster? So if we do this differently, or if we, I don't know, use different balls or do some other tactics, does it really make the boat go faster? So asking simple questions is something I think the great coaches always do. Is that okay for a start?
That's a great answer.
That's a perfect start. I mean, this idea of conflict.
Okay.
This idea of conflict is very interesting, isn't it? Because I know Rick Charlesworth talks about it a lot, mining for conflict. And Rick is friends with Eddie Jones, the famous rugby coach. And I think it's central to his philosophy. He believes there's always conflict. And if it's not visible, you've got to mine for it. So that really resonated, I think, with me. And it's something that's consistent with the other coaches we've heard of. But David, maybe I'll hand to you to ask a little bit about where the journey began.
Sure. I'm overwhelmed by how good that first answer was. It was so good. There's so much richness there for my coaching students to think about what separates great coaches out. Just touching on conflict briefly, if you're in a team situation and there isn't any conflict, I'd be very suspicious.
Absolutely.
As I think Paul alluded to, it's underneath the surface if it's not apparent. And conflict, I love the way that you turn conflict around to be a positive force. And I've read about a concept called healthy conflict. And, it's a source of learning and understanding, as you indicate. So really fascinating, really interesting. In terms of does it make the boat go faster, it made me think of what I think is an Australian term, Paul, which is it worth the candle? In other words, is it worth going through this? Is it worth it?
I've never heard that one. I'm sorry.
Haven't you?
No.
Really? Well, I've got an Australian academic paper. It's quite obscure, but that's the title of it. Is it worth the candle? And I quite like that. It was very Australian in its terms. That was a terrible Australian accent.
Sorry,
right,
Dave.
Markus, you talked about having a clear vision, which I think is really important. But I just want to understand a little bit about how you got into coaching, and if what I've read is right, I think it was an element of happenstance, and I don't think you planned to go into.
No. It was. Oh yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. It wasn't the plan. It sort of happened to me. Well, I started coaching. I didn't even knew I was coaching when I was still an active player. It just happened to me. I was kind of players coach, and that's the way it started. So I played for Mannheim, and I started as a replacement coach because someone was not available. I would do some sessions, stuff like that. But seriously, I started at the end of 91, I think, because at that time, a colleague came to me and she said, I've got this group of really talented girls, 10 to 12 years old of age. And there's a super talented group. And if I go on coaching these girls, they will not make it. They're not become the players they could become. Can you take over this group? And I thought, I've never coached 10 to 12-year-old girls. What the heck do I really do this? So I showed up and checked the group, and it was full of talent. So I said, okay, let's give it a go and try. how far you can get. And so the core team was superb. It was huge, and it was, I don't know, 25 to 30 girls. So you could afford to lose some, because once I started, it was all about performing better. And that's not everybody's cup of tea in a group of girls with 30 guys. So we lost some, but the core remained stable and went all the way. I think to me, that was the start. At that time, I was still studying. I'm not coming from, study-wise, I'm not coming from sports. I didn't study sports science or coaching. I studied business administration, not because it was my favorite subject. I didn't have a better plan, so I started. And Mannheim University is pretty big at business administration. So I was kicked out of university nearly twice, and learned a lot about mental stability and oral exams. So I pushed through, and I got my diploma. And so the plan was not to end up being a full-time coach. I started working as I started working in a small hockey firm, and did that for 5 years. And coaching went along as a second job. And my plan was never to go all in, because at that time, that wasn't really a perspective to kind of grow a family and build your life on. You couldn't earn the money, to be honest. And nowadays, that's so 35 years later, that has changed. But when I started, it wasn't a professional perspective. So the first offer I got was in 2003 as a full-time coach for the German Federation. That was the time when I said, okay, I'm going all in. I take the risk, not knowing if it's going well. If it's not going well, I might find something else. So that's how I got into it.
I think it's really interesting. I was talking to my final year students, going out into the world of work soon and trying to get them more clued in for their employability. And we visited a theory called Krumboltz's learned happenstance theory. It's about career, but it's exactly illustrating what you're saying is, we fall into things and we find our way almost by accident. We wayfind a little bit. Just a couple of questions about that though, before we move on. You said that you kind of fell into this because you were a player who was quite influential on others. Were you a captain at that time?
Yeah, I was captain. I wasn't, my players' ability I was a decent player and a useful player on a first and second division level of playing. Okay, most of the time I played in second division. I wouldn't bring myself to change clubs. I could have changed and played more seasons in the first division as a useful player in midfield. Okay, but I was never close to making a spot on national team. Okay, but for some reason I was voted captain, and at some stage we replaced our long-time coach, and I had to play and coach. So that kind of thing just happened as well. It wasn't planned. I had to do this brilliant talk. I was captain, so I had to go and meet the coach and tell him that the team has just voted you off. You're no longer the coach. It's a brilliant talk. I loved it, but I had to do it. And I did it, and after that, okay, we didn't have a coach, so I had to do this.
So that prepared you for conflict. I wonder, is the way you captained, is that reflective of the way you ended up coaching?
I'm not sure of my captain's role, but it's okay. The captain's role it's connected to the leadership, and leadership is connected to coaching. But there is something, I don't know, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine. Let's move on a little bit to later on when you were very successful in coaching. So at 3 successive Olympic Games from 2004 onwards, you led teams that won Olympic gold medals. So I wonder what evolved in your style and your coaching process from the first to the third medal. Kind of what was the journey of development for you as a coach alongside that?
That's a tough one. Actually, I don't think there's a big change in myself. I really used the same approach in all these 3 campaigns.
Okay.
What did change? There is something that did change, and how can I describe that? It's about being close or being distant towards players.
Yeah.
And when I started coaching, if there is a scale from 1 to 10, and 1 is you're super close to players and teams, like you're kind of the same group of family, and you do everything that you're the best friend of the players. That's the number 1. And number 10 is the opposite side. You're totally distant, and you hate these players, and you wouldn't talk to them. Okay, totally distant. I was never a 1. I was never a 2, and sometimes I went as close as 3. But I could act as a number 10. I remember we had the Olympic qualifier with the girls team in 2004 in Auckland. We qualified, and by reaching the semi-final, and after we had 2 more games, and in my eyes we played shitty hockey, and I wouldn't talk to the girls for 2 days. So I still had the ability to, even though there was the success, I still had the ability to act a bit childish and super distant. I took it personally, to be honest. And so after a while, I realized that this is not the best way to go.
Yeah.
But I still managed to. My worst coaching experience was the World Cup 2006, where I don't know, mismanaged the tournament completely, and I think we ended up in position 8, even though we drew against the later World Cup winner, Holland. So it was not so much about the level of the team, but my level of coaching. I think that was the poorest level of coaching I did, because I brought private problems into that setting, and I wasn't able to change my position towards the team. So if something is going wrong, at that stage I would just blame the team, and I expected the team to move towards me, and I couldn't bring myself to move towards the team. At that stage, that would have been necessary to change something in this tournament, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. So that changed later on. So while I matured to become a better coach, I think it's crucial to learn that you shouldn't be too close, and you shouldn't be too distant towards your team, because that hurts the relationships inside the team. And if these relationships are hurt, you would no longer. High performance is far more difficult to achieve.
That's really interesting. Thanks for that answer on evolution and change. I'm going to flip that round a little bit to talk about stability and authenticity. So many coaches have reached the top in terms of achievements in sport, but very few have stayed at the top consistently, which is something that's remarkable about you. So what was it about you as a person and a coach that enabled you to achieve consistent success, do you think, in winning 3 successive Olympic golds across 8 years and becoming the only coach to win Olympic golds with both men's and women's team sports?
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, that again it's a really good question. My answer would be a major disaster, I fear. Okay, once you are a successful coach and you stay a successful coach, then there's a story explaining that success. That's fine, but it's not the truth. It's not the same as that's the whole story. It's just a list of plausible arguments explaining why you were a successful coach. But in my mind, it was always clear that there's a super thin line separating success from failure. And in my mind, it goes through the head of the players. And as soon as you step over the line in your head, well, you have a choice. Every single minute you play, you have a choice. Do I play as a proactive player, or do I play as a reactive player? Do I coach as a proactive coach, or do I coach as a reactive coach? And as soon as you step over that line and you don't realize, you're coaching or you're playing on the wrong side of the pitch in your head. So it was so much luck and coincidence involved that it's really, I'd be a liar to say just because I coached so brilliantly, we went on to win these three tournaments. I mean, it's the same result, and there's three different stories behind every campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And people ask me often, what difference does a coach make? And at best, well, one thing to say first of all, I shock my final year students when after 3 years I say to them, "There's no real clear evidence that coaching works. Show me it." It's all implied by results, etc. And I think it's really interesting you saying about the narrative that builds up around legendary coaches, particularly. But let me flip that narrative bit back to you to help you get a perspective on that question. What would your players say it was about you as a person and a coach that caused them to achieve highly there?
Well, you would ask to have my players, but I know bits and pieces what they say in hindsight. I think they have a really good feeling of what kind of person you are when you're working with these guys, and I think they would say, okay, he had the strength to get people on board that were in various aspects are stronger than the coach himself. So I always try to compose my staff teams and get brilliant staff people on board who were better. Like I'm a generalist, I'm good in technical stuff. I'm good in tactics. I know a lot about every single aspect. I'm not a specialist in any single area. So I think in your leadership role, it's crucial to bring on people who are brilliant in their expertise on the one hand, and who don't have a super ego to just play on their brilliance all day long. So, and that is the same on the player side. If you read the books of Phil Jackson, he has this great example of what separates good teams from great ones. He says, I think good teams become great ones when the members trust each other enough to surrender the me for the we.
Yes,
that's I always get goosebumps when I say that, because it rings so true, and it's exactly my experience. So I think players would say that, okay, that was one of my stronger points, especially managing tournaments, that this feeling of we was really there in all three campaigns in the Olympic tournament. Not necessarily before that, but in the tournament, I managed to somehow create it and keep it alive.
That's really interesting. Before I hand you back to Paul, just a couple of quick things. Jackson also said, I love Jackson's work, selflessness is the soul of teamwork. I love that phrase. It's really
absolutely. Yeah.
And before people come and lynch me for saying that coaching doesn't work or coaches don't add any value, one of my favorite coaches, Dave Sexton's, an English football coach, said that a coach probably makes 10% difference at best. He said, but 10% from a well-educated coach is.
I agree. I mean, you're not playing. You're not doing anything on the pitch. The players do the hard work. So all you have to do is help them, and try maybe become a bit better and work together a bit better. So I totally agree. Maybe it's just 10%. Maybe sometimes it depends on the situation and the context. Sometimes it might be more. But on average, it might only be 10%. I agree.
Yeah, thank you.
Markus, I have this interesting quote from you I'd like to explore. You say, and one thing you need to prevent as a coach is to break that motivation and demotivate your players. That's probably one of the most important leadership tasks you have. Can you tell me?
Okay.
It's a big call, and I want to understand why you call that out as being so important.
Well, I think to be honest, I think it's much easier to demotivate a player than to motivate them. And if you work with, I worked for years with the top 30, top 34 players in Germany. Okay, these players are really outstanding. I had world-class players, female and male. So the job, these guys are motivated. I mean, in field hockey, you can't make it. It's not a professional sport. you can't make a living from it. So you have people who train twice a day and go to university or do a job. So these guys are motivated, and they can't afford doing a shitty job because they're going to get kicked out of their companies, and they can't afford, they can prolong their studies maybe a bit, but they can't afford to be shit in their studying, because at the end of the day, that's the baseline for their later profession. So I've got these super motivated players, and if my ego is super big and it's all about me, and that's one way to demotivate players. Or if you have this situation where you can only select 18 players for a tournament from a group of maybe 24 to 30, so you leave out people, and they've done nothing wrong. So as demotivating is as soon as a player has no longer a perspective to be selected for the next tournament, and you have to give that perspective in an honest talk. He will lose, or she will lose motivation, and you shouldn't allow that. As soon as you allow that, the level of the whole group is going downwards, and as that's exactly the wrong way to go, because from tournament to tournament, or from Olympics to thinking in a 4 or 5 year cycles, you have to be better than 4 years ago. So think about it and try not to demotivate players, and so monitor their behavior. Is there an indication that there's some lack of motivation? And as soon as you discover that, or someone on the staff discovers that, that's a call to action. You need to talk with players. What's going on? Just tell me, or tell someone you trust. Sometimes as a head coach, you need guys on your staff, because not every single player wants to go to the head coach who selects the team and open up. Okay. So if there's some sort of problem, you need some people on your staff where players can go and open. And then maybe I don't even have to know. I don't have to know. All I know is, okay, there's a talk, and I trust my staff, I trust the players, and maybe one talk can fix the whole thing. And it's again about relationships.
I think
it's all about relationships, isn't it, coaching?
There's this theme that comes through, though, we're listening to you, that it's about whether it's, monitoring the relationships within the team, dealing with problems, reflecting. There's this speed with which you act on insight.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be a theme that comes through when you talk. And there'll be a lot of people listening who are in boardrooms or community groups and probably don't have that same speed to act on insights they're picking up within the team that they've got. So it is interesting to hear you talk so openly about it and how frank you are with addressing these challenges.
I think my next question hits the agenda of the longer term decision-making process, so it might be nice to go on to that. So Markus, can you share with us how and why you go about separating success goals from performance goals?
Yeah, I learned that from a book. I think it's an Englishman. Is it John Whitmore? John Whitmore. He wrote Coaching for Practice. That's the German title. I don't know what the English.
In English, it's Coaching for Performance. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Super. And that was the first time I learned these crucial lessons about. I think the examples was Lynn Davis. He was a long jumper, and he won a gold medal in '64 and was the big favorite in '68. We all know who won the long jump in '68, and no one knows Lynn Davis. I'm sorry to say that, but we all know Bob Beamon because he won, and the competition there was done for every single jumper, and Lynn Davis in '68 was the favorite because in an interview he said, all I could think in 4 years, I'm the favorite and I want to win another gold medal, and that's a success goal. The downside with success goals is there are some factors you can't control that have an influence on success goals. In a team sport, for example, it's the decision making of the refs. Sometimes they just blow bullshit in, and it's against you, and it has an influence on the outcome of the game. Sometimes you suffer from injuries because some of your key players, he might have a car accident. It's not his fault, but he might have a car car accident and he's out for 6 months. So there are factors outside of your own control that have an influence of success goals. And that's the reason why in that book, it was promoted to build a second layer of goals, performance goals. And the criteria is, okay, they need to be, by definition, you need close to 100% control over these goals. So you've got technical stuff, you've got tactical stuff, you can do the athletic stuff, you can mental training, nutrition. That's all under your own control. And the better you are there, the more likely it becomes that the success target is also achieved. So you can plan performance, you can't plan success.
Yeah, I think
that made a lot of sense to me. And so as soon as I realized that's a good idea, I started doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in a leadership position here for staff, and they're looking back with rose-tinted glasses on the past, and we're not performing as high as we were. But you've got to celebrate the everyday wins and the small battles, and the things you can control. And then eventually the big things happen from those small things. There's a John Wooden quote there somewhere, but I can't remember it. Right. I think we'll move on a little bit to kind of transferability. So some people have claimed that high quality leadership performance is transferable across different domains and settings, notably people like Sir Clive Woodward, who claimed that Arsene Wenger could run the post office. But few have successfully demonstrated that in applied action. Clive Woodward himself wasn't very successful in transferring to football. Why did you initially transfer your leadership from German hockey to the German Football Association? And what were the constraints and affordances of doing so once you made the move?
Well, actually, I didn't do that because I did not have a leadership role in German football. And when after London in 2012, I thought about, okay, do I go on coaching Germany's men till the end of my professional days? Is that a good idea? And I had a feeling that it's not a good idea for me and it's not a good idea for the team. And so I was not actively looking for some other stuff. And in 2015, this opportunity fell out of the blue sky into my lap. I got a call, and from German Football Federation, they were looking for a guy who had success, who came outside the football world. They were trying to build an academy for German football and need someone doing the conceptual work. And I thought that's interesting. So I was not in a leadership position. I was doing strategy processes with colleagues of the Federation and McKinsey. And we wrote about 15 books in various areas of football with the aim to make these areas better. And I did that for 3.5 years. And after that, I had again the feeling, okay, that's enough now. I have to move on and do something else. And I think the Federation had the same feeling.
Let's explore a couple of bits of that if I can. Why was it not a good idea to carry on coaching hockey? I mean, you just won 3 successive Olympic golds. Before you
I could have done it. I could have done that. That's right. But Klopp, for example, it's kind of comparable. He had a feeling, okay, now I have to make a break. I have to have a break now from Liverpool. I could go on coaching Liverpool. It's a brilliant job. It's a brilliant team. There's endless resources. I can go on. But he had a feeling, no, I can't. And I had kind of the same feeling that it also, how do you say it? I'm not saying it eats you up, but in a way it does. You also, it costs you a lot. And when you're as long as you're young, you don't realize that you do have to pay a price. And I'm pretty sure that really a lot of older, mature coaches would say, okay, there's a price tag because you have to put in a lot of energy, and in a way it consumes part of you. So you need to develop a feeling, okay, when you have to stop and go for something. I could have after Tokyo, I was asked again do you want to coach another team? And I said, no, I'm not going back. For me, it would be a step into the wrong direction.
I was fascinated to talk to you because I've read and listened to quite a lot about you in the last few days, and I was really interested because a pillar of when you're coaching athletes is, it seems to me that the most important thing you look for in athletes is their own inner drive, their own motivation.
Say again?
It seems to me that when you work with players, the most important thing of players is their own inner drive, their own inner motivation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was really fascinated to find out about your inner motivation for that change. So I appreciate you said that coaching can be all-consuming, and like Klopp, there's an emotional intensity that can drain you. So I read that you wanted a new challenge, which made. So were you a bit jaded at that time in terms of your coaching role in hockey?
Well, actually, I've never stopped coaching hockey, but I reduced the intensity. And even when, the 3.5 years at football, I stopped because I had to go to Frankfurt and I spent lots of hours on train commuting from Hamburg to Frankfurt. So I stopped for 3.5 years, but as soon as I went back to hockey, I picked up coaching again. So, but this is more like projects, or I coached the girls team where my daughters playing. So, but nowadays, sometimes I just ask, well, can I, or I am asked, do you want to come to the under-21 female program and do some penalty corners or do some goal scoring stuff? And that's just for a couple of days. So I'm attached to campaigns on a day off base, and that's a great way to go for me right now. So I'm no longer in the position of being responsible for that team, but I can add value.
Yeah. So it's very much on your terms, but you're still able to connect with the purpose and joy of coaching to add value.
Yeah.
Switching to team selection, what have you learned about team selection and the way it can cause conflict within the team if we revisit conflict?
Yeah, well, team selection is a tricky beast, especially if it comes down to select a team for the Olympic tournament, because at the end of my experience is at the end of the day, you sit there, you can nominate 18 players and you've got 21. And so the first 10, 12, maybe even 15, it's quite easy to nominate these guys and no one will argue against it. But the last 3 spots, maybe it's not so super easy. So what I did is I tried to listen to my intuition. We built these Excel sheets and filled teams. And so maybe at the end of you've got 3 different teams, because in team A, these 3 players are playing, and in team B, and I tried to listen to my gut feeling, and if some sheet felt better, I would pick these guys. So that means I tried to select players because of hard criteria, and I could explain that also to the guys who weren't nominated, but at some stage it's just no longer possible in my eyes to tell a player why he's not on the team, and then come up with stuff like, okay, and you're not, I don't know, they're all fit, they all contribute, I don't know. I couldn't differentiate, okay, there's some hard criteria, it's easy. I couldn't do it. There were no longer any criteria to do that, no, because he was the better runner, he's the faster guy. It just wasn't there.
So sometimes it's intuitive or gut reaction. You've got all your facts, but there's a subjective decision to be made.
Exactly. And it's not just, you would like to nominate just based on facts, okay, on hard criteria. And it kind of evaporates into nothing for the last 2 or 3 spots, or maybe it's just 1 or 2 spots, or the last spot. And if there are no hard facts, I think you should listen to your intuition, because if I don't know. I can't really explain that. Just by looking at ABC, why B does feel better than A or C. But if it does, I'm going to go for B.
Business is booming. But you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think unpaid bills were just part of it. Ugh. But batch payments? Wow. Automated accounts payable? Even better. All in one place. That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No bills in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.
Here's a shift worth noting. Better healthcare is care that meets patients where they are. United Health Group is bringing it directly to living rooms. This is a win for patients managing chronic conditions. And here's the interesting thing. By closing those care gaps, administering in-home exams, and identifying risks earlier, more diseases can be prevented and patient outcomes can improve. In 2025 alone, United Health Group patients received over 19 million home visits. Learn more at unitedhealthgroup.com/commitment.
Talking of honest advice rather than BS, when or if your daughters ever came to you for advice about leading, what would you tell them?
It's so simple question and so hard to answer.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're trying to lead someone, it's not good enough to just tell them. Like, people have a good feeling of, is that guy, is he or she, is he really a good leader? And sometimes you also can't explain why people feel comfortable being led by someone. I think the most important thing is to create clarity. If you want to be a good leader, we need to talk about assumptions. We need to clarify expectations. For players, it's extremely important that they know what the coach is expecting from them. And on the other side, I want to know what the players expect from me. And my experience is, in hindsight, I would say I haven't done it. I haven't done that sort of talk enough. Also, checking our assumptions is something of value. I assumed on the men's team, I had a player with 250 caps, for example, and I wouldn't talk in a one-on-one situation with him because I assumed he wouldn't be interested. He was two-time World Cup winner. He was an Olympian already, a gold medalist, and for him it was just all routine. But he told me, "Please talk to me. I want to know what you think." And I assumed he wouldn't care. So that was a crucial lesson for me. So it's about clarity. Then it's about, leading is you have to not run around in circles. You have to work in loops, I think. So clarity is the first step. Then it's about analyzing what you do. In a sports context, the game writes your training, or should write your training. I could fill my 2 hours of training with some spectacular rondos of Pep Guardiola, for example. Okay, that's also some sort of training, but is it connected to my world of hockey? ? And so I need to have a clear notion of what to achieve on the pitch. Then something's happening on the pitch. That's my analysis, and it should go into training. So how effective has every single player been on the field? How effective have we been on the pitch as a team? That goes into the next training sessions. And then you try to evolve on what you found in practice. You establish that sort of stuff in your next training sessions, and you try to grow. If you do it properly, you've got this upward spiral, so loop after loop after loop, and you perform slightly, sometimes faster, sometimes nothing's happening at all. So you get stuck, but that's normal. But I think so. Working in loops is a good idea to become a leader when people accept what you do. And if as soon as you lose that acceptance, you're no longer leading, you're doing job, but people will have difficulties to follow you.
I love that idea of leadership as trying to create virtuous cycles. I'll pass you over to Paul at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe one simple question to finish with, Markus. I feel like we've put you through the ringer today, and it's only early morning over there in Hamburg, but I'd really love to know, I know you're still coaching, but I'd really love to know what you think is the legacy you've left behind so far as a coach.
Oh my God, the great word, legacy. I can from here, from my desk, I can see a book called Legacy. It's about the All Blacks. It's a wonderful book.
We've interviewed James Kerr, great guy.
Yeah, it's just great to study that sort of thing. I don't know. I've never given any thought about my legacy, and I've no answer to that. And to me, it's also, I don't think it's super important what some people will say in about 10 or 50 years, if they say anything at all about myself and my legacy. I'd rather talk about the legacy of my teams and not the legacy of myself. I don't view myself as such an important part in these campaigns. I'm a team guy, and I just did my job. So talking about legacy, it will be a question for the teams and not a question for me.
So many times I hear great coaches give that answer. I think there's probably, if I was to challenge you, I think there's probably something in there about the way that you look at relationships and the speed with which you mine for conflict and help resolve that conflict. But I've only met you today, so I shouldn't be so poor at suggesting that. But Markus, thank you so much for your time today. It's been tremendous getting to know a little bit about your history and the amazing journey you've been on from an amateur coach through to a 3-time gold medal winning coach. It's a tremendous story, and we appreciate you taking the time to share it with us.
Thanks very much for the invitation. I'm honored.
Thank you.
Thank you, Markus. I've been honored. It's been really interesting. Loved it. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Paul here, and you have been listening to the great coach Markus Weise. I hope you enjoyed Markus's story and found a few ideas that you can bring back to your own dinner table, locker room or work table for discussion. When I listened back, some of the highlights for me were his distinction between success and performance goals and how he uses both with his athletes and teams. The way he talks about the difference between being a reactive or proactive player or coach and why the distinction is so important. And the insight and learning he has around finding the line between being too close or too distant from the people you are leading. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like at P. Clark Perform, who said, "Excellent, a really novel approach and works really well. #leadership. Thanks, P. Clark Perform." We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. And if they're positive ones, then why not let a friend or family member know too? All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.